I have such this desire for people to understand light language and to know that it's like your own divine superpower. My light language started as speaking in tongues in the Christian church. I've been married a couple of times, and my big pivot point, 'cause I've been married 3 times. So my big pivot point was after my second marriage. I was the common denominator and all the craziness.
This honest conversation is caffeinated by Integrity Coffee, a Michigan roaster making your mornings a little easier and a lot better. You can shop once or subscribe monthly so your coffee shows up before your personality disappears. Order at integritycoffee22.com and use the code HONEST20. Real talk, raw feelings. Welcome to Atunigrade's podcast series. If I'm being honest, I'm your host, Nishani Jayawardene. I'm the founder of Atunigrade. And I'm Himgori, Gigi to my friends. I'm the creative mind and founder behind Tessellations. I build brands that mean something. Today, we have another very special guest, somebody who I accidentally, I should mention, met on a social media platform, TikTok.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful. I was so grateful that she fell on my FYP. She landed, I think that's the word. She landed on my FYP because she has introduced me to something really new to me, I should say, which is why I wanted to invite her as soon as I made friends with her. And I wanted her to bring this information to our audience and to help me and my co-host Gigi understand a little bit more about what she does. So allow me to introduce Nilzara Rivera. She is a light language healer and teacher who helps eldest daughters of addict fathers reclaim their mind, heart, and cookies. We'll get into the cookies part because I'm really curious what that was. When I read it, I was like, wait,
Yes.
what does that mean? But all right. So the purpose of what she does is so that they can create the life that they desire without living under the heavy influence of others. Through light language, trauma-informed healing, and deep self-reclamation work, she supports people in moving through trauma responses, people-pleasing, and the messy but powerful process of coming back home to themselves. And you guys, if you guys have been listening to our podcast, to our very devout listeners, you all know that this is Gigi and my like everyday language. This is what we talk about. We are here to educate. We're here to help all of our listeners, including ourselves, expand our own knowledge about what it means to go through this healing journey. That's what we're all here for, right? So, Nilzara, thank you so much for being a guest in this podcast. Thank you for accepting the invitation. And I
Of course.
cannot wait to get into this topic because Gigi and I are both, I've only been learning about light language because of you. Through your posts and just kind of engaging with your own, I think there's a downloadable introductory package that you share freely with your audience. So I had been tapping into that and really learning how I can touch base with my own language. And that's something I
Yeah.
really loved that you shared, that you were encouraging all of us to build our own light language with source. So anyways, thank you for being a part of this podcast. Welcome to If I'm Being Honest.
Yes, I'm excited. I know it's taken us a little bit to get here finally, and I am, you know, timing is everything, and I think it was all divine timing. So I'm excited to
Mhm.
be here and talk about all the things. I feel like I have such this desire for people to understand light language and to know that it's like your own divine superpower. And in
Mm,
my mind, it just makes sense that everybody should be using it. Like, why aren't, like, I feel like people are almost scared of it, in a sense.
mm,
And so I'm
mm,
like, no, this is like yours. It's you can't do anything wrong with it. Even if like the intention is pure, right? The intention
mm.
comes from your soul and you just can't go wrong with it. So anyways,
Yeah, yeah.
we'll start from there.
Yeah, in fact, I genuinely want to kind of introduce to the audience light language in your own words,
Mhm.
how you might describe it. I think you actually already started the conversation of like it's your own
Yeah.
connection with divine, with source, right? Whatever, whoever you believe is your creator. So yeah, how would you describe light language? Yeah, where would we
Yeah.
start?
I would just add one more element to that, which would be like, yes, how do you know your own light language and how
Hmm,
would somebody recognize that they have something like this?
hmm,
Because that also takes certain kind of awakening. So there are people who are on the brink of it. So yeah, just like a two-parter to that.
Yeah. So light language is our own divine soul, or like our soul's language, direct connection to source. So, and I
Mm.
like to say it's not, source, because my light language started as speaking in tongues in the Christian church. So
Mm.
I feel like
Mm.
that's really important to share, is that across, years and years, there's been studies and there has been documentation of things called ecstatic speech, glossolalia, speaking in tongues, and
Mhm.
they all are at the core the same. The only thing that shapes them differently is your belief system.
Mm.
So I think
Okay.
it's beautiful in a sense, is like God literally meets us wherever we're at whatever capacity. So even in the Christian realm, I started
Mm.
speaking in tongues when I was 10. Then,
Mhm.
as time goes by, I got older, still in the church. But in the church, it was very limited. It was like you do it for healing and for praise to God. But when I started deconstructing, I was like, what the hell do I do with this? Like, I know it's
Mm.
not me. I don't, I'm not just making this stuff up, like I know it's not me. I know there's something divine that's happening. So that's when I tapped in and I started doing research, and I went to an online conference and I heard somebody else doing it, but she was kind of like throwing up gang signs when she was doing it. And I was
Mm.
like, what is this? She sounds like me. Oh my gosh. So I found out light language. So I dived in deep. I started doing research, and that's when I found out it's all the same. So our soul literally
Mm.
has direct communication with source, and it's what is it's you know what is the word I'm looking for? I'm having a brain fart. I'm sorry, but it's molded by our belief system. So I think
Mm.
it's beautiful, again, that we have that regardless of where we're at. It's just the intention behind it, right? That we have that desire to connect,
Mm.
and it can come online. It's a remembering that we have. It's not necessarily an activation or an attunement that happens, because attuning is almost like you get a Reiki attunement, and you can think of that
Mm.
as like I'm putting an antenna to get some type
Mm.
of connection, but it's not necessarily having to put an antenna in, it's more of a remembering. So I feel like they're very different, and I really want to
Mm.
stress that for people to understand that this is
Mm.
something they came preloaded with. This is not something that they have to go through, a special class. Of course, an activation can help, but it's about you giving yourself permission to remember and practicing.
Mm.
And also that light language isn't just verbal, it's physical as well, and it's also script. So to answer your question, Gigi, sometimes people are doing these things and they don't know that they're doing it. They'll see my
Mm.
video and be like, I've been doing that. There's a name for that. And I'm like, yes, like you're divinely connected and shit is turning on. And you are creating light codes with your own body, with your own experience that's going to
Mhm.
help change everything down to a cellular level within you. And
Mm.
this is why I feel like everybody should be utilizing it. It is for our edification first and foremost. And
Mm.
as long as we set the intention, like we are good. So I don't know if that
Oh,
answered all the
wow.
questions, but yeah.
Yeah, it did. And I am in love with the line. We all have come preloaded with it. And I think I had to write it down. I'm like, this stays with me now. And
Mhm.
now
Yes.
that we know, I would be excited to explore. Like, I'm sure that there are people like me who would have never taken that, right time and amount to sit through and look at our actions. And is that something that's called a light language? I don't know yet.
Mm.
But
Mm.
it's something that I'm going to start tapping into. I'm going to channel myself with these. But like, what would be that first nugget that you would want to like, give it to somebody saying that this is that one sign that probably you would know that you're picking up on something, or like it's your
Mm.
time to channel this energy out, because everything comes at the right time for everyone, I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I think that's important too. So I think that the second we decide to start connecting with our light language, we're already tapping into it. So
Right.
it just sometimes there's things within us that need to shift in order for us to see it physically. But once we
Mm.
make the commitment to it, things within us are the dynamics within us are already shifting to support that.
Cool.
So sometimes we have to dismantle certain belief systems. Our ego can be really loud during this time, like,
Yeah.
what is going
Mm.
on here? But one of the biggest things in my guide is like, you have to know that it's very separate from like linguistics. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're using the other part of your brain, the right side of your brain when you're using light language. And it's the same thing with the movement and it's the same thing with the script. For me, I feel that things are coming without it being me, if that makes sense. So it's kind of
Yes.
like you can have the conversation with yourself, like, this is weird. I wonder if this is me. And if you're having that conversation with you, then you're most likely tapped in and you're channeling. It's just your ego that's just kind of like, hey,
Mm.
I'm going to rein you back in because we're doing some weird shit right now. So it's like we need to figure this out, and we need to come back in. But if you can learn how to allow your ego to say whatever it needs to say and still invite the ego into the experience, then the ego is going to recalibrate and know that this is normal. So that part takes time.
Mm. Yeah.
But if you continue to practice, it'll be like a second language to you. Like I can tap into it just like I could speak it right now if I wanted to. I can go right into it. It's just the
Mm.
practice that like with
Right.
any other gift, we have to practice.
Mm.
Yeah. Makes so much sense because like when you're talking, my head was just like probably like I feel like every word of it because sometimes I'm like, that's getting a lot too much. Like come back. Like that is not needed because again, like you have to learn, you have to understand everything. And that's why I said it comes to you at the right time. Like if somebody asked me this 2 years ago, I didn't even know like light language existed. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had this conversation, I'm going to say a year back with somebody, and that was the first time I understood what light language is, but
Mm-hmm.
not to an extent of like I could as tap into those energies as well. So just for people like listening, like as she mentioned, if we all come preloaded with it, and yes, we all do all of these things. And the last thing that you mentioned, we all tap into all of these energies and somehow we think that we have gone beyond, and then we pull, like our ego gets in between and we pull ourselves back and we're like, oh no, we're only meant to lead like this. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you are unlocking something in this conversation with me right now. I'm just going to say that because
I love
it's
that.
for the first time somebody has put the things that you want to listen in a sequence for you, right? Like a bunch of things, but like sometimes it's needed that they fall into the right place and the right energies in front of you. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Like even initially, like we are not like we're just 10 minutes, 20 minutes into our conversation, like, and I'm like, I already like usually I feel like this after an hour. I'm like, oh, my heart is really full. I'm like, no, at the first 10 minutes, I'm like, yes, it feels really warm. So thank you so much for like, bringing that energy because yeah, like it's all about tapping and it's, as I mentioned, it's unlocking something as we are talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And having said that, I have another word for it because see, we all somehow understand these things, but there are skeptics as well.
Mm-hmm.
People who come in front of us constantly and are like, there is nothing like this.
Mm-hmm.
How, people who are trying to unlock their language, how do they kind of explore and find their voice in between of all of this noise?
So you're asking like how do they like practice or how do they unlock this? Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking?
Unlock or even like believe into their energies because sometimes like I would say something that I feel personally like this. Luckily I have Nishani in my life. Like when I say something like that, she's like, yeah, like she'll affirm all of these things. But everybody doesn't have that space or that understanding to do that. They'll be like, oh no, like you're weird or that's not true. Maybe, you're channeling or you're watching too many of these woo things. And like, they'll kind of put you in a different track completely. And there are
Mm-hmm.
more people like that than people who understand where you come from. So how does somebody
Sure.
navigate and find their tribe?
Mm,
So I feel like when we're, and let me know if this is, if I'm off here, but I feel like when we're connecting with people about these types of things, we need to be really particular. And I think we need to
mm,
remember that this is very sacred. And I think
mm,
that, like, for me, Facebook and TikTok do a great job at making me think that there are other people out there who are kind
mm.
of on the same page. But in reality, like, not a lot of
Yeah.
people are here in this space, and not a lot of people are, like, really
Mm,
doing the work. And not to say, people always come back at me and
mm.
they're like, "How could you say that?" And I'm like, I mean, because it's true. I mean, I don't know, like, not to say that I know where everybody's at, and I don't wanna sound like, but I feel like once you get to a place, you can feel when somebody is putting the time in, when they're putting the time in. And so
Yeah.
I have to be very careful with who I talk to and who I share this information about, because you do get those comments of like, well, maybe you're doing too much of
Mm.
this. Well, maybe this is not right. And
Mhm.
the thing is that when we
Yep.
start to develop our own individuality with our spirituality, that automatically challenges other people. Whether they believe it or not, I
Mm.
feel in a sense that our reality challenges other people's realities. So immediately we make
Mm.
people feel uncomfortable, and they're like, "What
Mm.
the hell? She's going a little doo doo doo," and they start getting almost
Yeah.
defensive or like worried for
Mm.
you, or and what I
Uh-huh.
have to say is like, feel into your body. Like, your body is the only thing that is with you from the beginning to the end. And if you
Mhm.
were like excited about this and just like, I can't believe this, and then you share with somebody and they say something and then you feel something in your body, then that's just kind of an indicator that they're not in the same flow as you are. So not that they're not doing the
Mm.
work or they're whatever. It's just that
Well,
they're not flowing in the same space that we are, and so they're not going to get it, and that's okay.
yes.
So I don't know if that answered your
Yeah.
question, but
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Like that's all because not every single time a person is going to match those energies with you,
Exactly.
and somehow you have to learn to navigate it. It's okay.
Mm.
Your reality is different and mine is. And as you
Right.
mentioned, it takes a little while for somebody to kind of get into yourself, be comfortable. And after a certain time, you're just like, this is who I am, and I'm okay being me now.
Mm. Mhm.
yeah.
So, yeah, that takes a longer time. I think that for me as well.
I think that is going to be a great segue because what Gigi is identifying is also the people pleaser, right? Like
Yep.
how when you
Yes.
start venturing into this healing journey, right? You start venturing into new worlds, you're vibrating at a different frequency, and that's kind of that the wavelength. Like you're just flowing at a different frequency, and then you align with people that are flowing in that same frequency, but you're also going to clash with people who are not going to know how to receive this new frequency. And so that's why you get the defensiveness. And that's the ego, right? I think Nilzara actually pointed this out where even your own ego can get in the way. So imagine somebody who hasn't even tapped into this, their ego is going to absolutely protect them and completely reject you, which sometimes sounds like an attack. Sometimes people
Hmm.
attack as a way of protecting themselves. That could be a verbal attack. That could be making fun of you. So I wanted to bring attention to because what Nilzara also does is that she helps people who may be recovering people pleasers or recognize their own people pleasing, right? So if you're tapping into something like language, which I love how you said it's a remembrance, that's what's really stuck out to me was that it's already in within you. You're just remembering that you have access to it and you're bringing that out and allowing it to surface in a safe way, which if you're struggling with potentially having traits of being a people pleaser, that could be really challenging. How do you bring it to the
Sure.
world or to yourself when you know people will reject it? I mean, I for sure know plenty of people in my real life today who may have a difficult time receiving this conversation and being like, what do you mean you guys are speaking in a weird language that doesn't make any sense and it's not understandable by anybody, right? Because as you said, it bypasses logic. This is not the logical brain. This is not locked in the
Yes.
logical brain. This is in the part of the brain where there's more emotion and there's that creativity. Like artists will say they want to tap into their right brain, right? Because your creative
Hmm.
expression looks differently. So this to me, light language is like an expression of artistry, right? It's your own expression in a
Yes.
way. It's just through your
Hmm.
voice box and through body movement. So yeah, I want to tap into, like, segue into the conversation on how this and people pleasing kind of blends together and how you might help someone navigate both, incorporating this while they're also learning how to not, or to stop being a people pleaser, or learn how not to respond to the world that way.
So I think light language is great for those of us that fall under the category of people pleasing for multiple reasons. However, there's the ego. So we'll get into that and the conditioning of that. However, with people
Mm-hmm.
pleasers, there tends to be a disconnect from self. And so this can
Mm,
be very difficult in the beginning, especially
mm,
because light language is here. It is within our body. It's embodiment. It is our intuitive knowing. It's
mm,
intertwined with so many things. And so
mm,
if we don't have an understanding of who our source is, we don't have an understand what we're connected to or where soul is, that's where things can kind of get a little hard because we are a unique expression of source. So
mm-hmm.
it's always important that you protect yourself. You stand in authority when you use light language, and those things are really important to understand the source part. Like, what does that mean for you? What does that look like for you? But if we can kind of switch into the people pleasing part, when we are disconnected, we don't necessarily have the words and the knowing of what's going on in our body. Sometimes we're upset and we don't, somebody, people will say, well, just what are you feeling? Yo, I don't fucking know what I'm feeling. That's what I'm feeling. I don't understand what is going on within my body right now because I'm
Mm,
just flipping the switch and there's a lot going on because I've been disconnected from it so long. So what I
mm,
love with light language is that we can set an intention of like, I feel overwhelmed right now. And
mm,
God, I need to bring peace into my body. I need to relax. I need whatever. Set the intention and then you go into your light language. So you don't
mm,
necessarily have to have like the specific words. You can just say, I'm having an experience and I'm calling out and I need XYZ. And then you start going into your light language and know that your body is creating light codes to help shift your energetic field to support your intention. So
mm,
if you're having a hard time and you're like, I just need some peace right now, you're calling in those light codes, you're doing what you need to, and you do that until you feel that shift in your body. And you did that for yourself. And it's not just like it's changing my energy. It is changing you down to like a cellular level. Like it impacts your DNA, it impacts everything. So it's not just like Reiki where it's energy work. Like you are
mhm,
cleansing and you are recalibrating, you are regenerating DNA and all of the things
mm,
with light language. So it's much deeper than just, oh, I did some light or some Reiki, which is great. I do Reiki. There's nothing wrong with it. But I'm just saying that there's a huge difference
mhm,
between the two. And so when
mhm,
you use light language, it is much deeper than anything that we can in the human form fathom because
mm,
it is our soul. And for most of us, our soul is old as hell. It's been around, it's done a lot of things. And so the knowledge and the understanding is much deeper than what we can create for ourselves. So that's why we set the intention and then we let the light language do it because it supersedes what we can do here.
mm.
I'm taking a minute to like kind of get
Yeah.
all the information, and yeah, it really resonates. My only one question to you would be like, when you know and when you want to channel that energy, it's not like you find a teacher or something like that who kind of guides you with your initial how to get into the flow of it, and how do you tap? So is there something that like you teacher teaches you, or somewhere down the line you learn about it as well? Like this would be more like somebody who is wanting to get into it as is very, very new.
Hmm.
So there's teachers, like I do activations and I can work through help and do all of those things.
Right.
But like I created the guide because I feel
Mhm.
like this is something that everybody should have access to and it's complimentary. But it's really, if you feel that you need a teacher, of course, if you feel that you need to do research, whatever you need to do to make your experience feel safe. That's the biggest
Mhm.
thing. Like, if
Mhm.
you want your experience to go a little faster, safety is the way. Some people want to just like
Mhm.
go in the closet by themselves and experiment, and that feels more safe to them. And
Right.
some people need somebody to hold their hand, which there's nothing wrong with that. And that's why I have the stuff that I do too, as well. But the biggest thing is like when you go into it, you are just giving yourself permission to remember. You give yourself permission to remember and then you practice. So one of the things is like you find somebody that you resonate with, the sound, because everybody sounds different. Some people sound angelic and
Mm.
and it's just like this beautiful experience. Some people kind of sound a little bit more clicky.
Okay.
They say that can be more like celestial beings, the angelic is the angels, and then you have like the tribal, which is more earthly, which is me. Like it's kind of thuggish, ruggish, like it just
Mhm.
is very native sounding. So
Mm.
you find what sound feels good to you, and then you practice to you and then you practice what they do, and then before you know it, your words will change. Or, I mean, you can hum, you can a, e, o, oo, your vowels. And what you're doing is when you practice is you're giving yourself permission to release that. Because again, as a
Mm.
codependent, you probably have difficulties communicating. You have a hard
Mhm.
time expressing yourself. So that might show up as well when you're doing vocal. So somebody who is a people pleaser might have an easier time doing script, which is just putting
Mhm.
pen to paper and letting your hand go, or letting your body move and kind of do its own thing before the sound comes out. It's all
Hmm.
about giving letting your ego know that this is safe to do. We can move, we can put a pen to paper and do whatever. And then sometimes you'll see the voice start to come forward,
Okay.
like through humming, the sound, finding somebody that you resonate with and using their words. And all that's doing, people are like, but I feel that I'm being fake, or it's
Mhm.
practice. It's practice.
Yeah.
It's like when even, you go to a dance rehearsal, you're practicing somebody else's dance,
Mhm.
until that's what you're doing, right? Until you can become your own and you choreograph your own. That's the same concept. So you step into it, you say, okay, today I'm going to work on my light language, choose whatever modality, and then you set the intention of that and make it comfortable for you. Be safe in it. Turn music on, dim the
Mhm.
light, whatever you want to do in that time frame. Get your favorite stuffed animal out. I don't whatever you need to do to create safety, and just
Yeah.
let yourself go. Give yourself permission to flow. And then if you feel a different light language coming through instead, just go with it and practice.
Mhm.
People are
Mhm.
scared to practice, but practice. So,
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think that's an excellent way to, in a safe container, welcome this instead of, and as you said, sometimes some people just need an additional aid, like a guide. Sometimes the
sure.
guide is just there as a master to just be like, okay, you got this. And then just like, okay, now fly, like go do, find what works for you. And I think that's a beautiful explanation. I can see myself practicing that, like, cause I, I, it's so true. Like, it's almost like you have to like allow your ego. It's almost like you have to have a
Yeah.
conversation with your ego before you even get into this to be like, hey, you're probably not going to like what we're about to do. It's not going to feel good to you, right? Like, this is not going to potentially be, oh, yeah, welcome. You're a complete stranger. I welcome you in my mind and space. Do you know what I mean?
For
Like,
sure.
I don't think the ego is going to be willing to do that in the beginning. So also what I'm hearing from you is like you keep repeating, like, set the intention. So if you ask for consent, you're consenting with your own self, you're asking for that consent, you're checking in
Yes.
with your own body, with your own ego, and you're then going, okay, now I'm going to allow what comes out to come out and in a safe manner. Right. So I think that's really cool. And So Nilzara, like you also you speak directly to eldest daughters of addict fathers. There's like elements to this, like trauma. There's so many different things that you do and the community that you serve. So I also wanted to, kind of tap into that and ask you how did that come to be? And I think it's most likely because you're an eldest daughter. And I think between the three of us, we carry the energy of it. I'm also an eldest daughter. Gigi as an only child, but that's basically an eldest daughter in my world.
Yes.
In my
Yeah,
account,
for
that's
sure.
essentially the same thing. So I guess I wanted to connect with that and see how all of that kind of also ties into this. So you tell us more about what got you into that niche in that population.
Yeah, so I actually just switched to that niche into this population like
Okay.
within the last 8 weeks.
Oh,
I've
okay.
always
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it's like super new. I have always catered to like that codependent type mentality, like thought process. That's always kind of been where my heart is. I used
Mm,
to be an intimate partner violence recovery coach. So
mm,
all kind of that chaoticness that comes with trauma sometimes. And so um, as I deconstructed, I had a business, a coaching business, and I got really sick and I kind of shut that down. And
yeah.
I came over here, transferred over to the spiritual side 100%, like cuz I was kind of in between still. But I
Uh-huh.
came over to this side and I was like, "Hey God, like how am I going to do this? Like who am I serving?
Mm,
Am I doing this as a business? Am I just doing this as things come up for me, just
mm,
willy-nilly?" And so again, the codependency came up for me and I was like, okay. And so I started working with a coach and she's like, let's make your message really clear. And I'm like, God, what does that look like for me? Because that
mm,
codependent side of me comes out and I want to serve everyone. I want to help the
mm,
whole world, but when you're so broad like that, it's hard for people to identify what you do and if it's going to help them.
mm,
So,
mm,
that took a lot of inner work. And I was like, one day it just clicked. It was like the eldest daughters of addict fathers. And it kind of scared me at the same time. I was like,
yeah.
okay, this is really niched down. This is really me.
Yeah.
So like I am very much the teacher, the coach, but I'm still a student in this. And
Mm,
so I just felt it in my body like it was this shift that happened that was like,
mm,
finally, I've put in all of this work, all of these years, and I'm here now to finally help this group of women. And I,
mm,
kind of felt silly about it. I'm human and there was kind of this back and forth
mm,
and I really felt like God was like, there's a very specific, how was it? So I had this conversation and water is really big to me. So this happened while I was taking a shower. And I was like, okay, God, sometimes I feel silly about this, about niching down this hardcore. And God was like, do you think that the trauma responses that children do are just by chance? And
mm,
I was like,
mm,
okay, no, because I'm always like, it's so fascinating that as a child, we learn what we need to do, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fornicate, whatever it is that we need to do in order to keep a false sense of love, safety, and belonging. Like how, this is fascinating to me. And God was like, this is not by chance. It's almost like we come with, okay, this is what we need to experience. So she's going to
mhm.
come down on earth. This is what's going to be chosen. And this is going to prepare her for whatever I signed up for to come down here.
Yeah.
And even
Sure.
though these gifts are attached to trauma, they've been nurtured from a very young age. And so it's
Mm,
the juice is when we can heal and detach the gifts from the
mm,
trauma and be able to use them at a capacity where we're in control of them instead of the trauma. But
mm,
so it's kind of been this whole thing where it's like, okay, God, here we are. And since I've done that, it has been such a flow within my business in the last 8 weeks. And the connections
cool.
I've made have been more clear. And then the mind, heart, and
Mm,
cookie to go to that, I
please.
actually
Yep.
coined that, trademarked that like almost 5 years ago. And I was
Oh,
deconstructing
Oh,
from Christianity. Yeah, I was deconstructing from Christianity. So I knew I was helping people reclaim their mind, heart, and cookie because at the time I felt like I sacrificed my womb. I could do a
Mm.
circus act in the bedroom to make sure that I wasn't dying because I was in an abusive relationship. So that's the kind of where it started off. But I
Yeah.
always felt like there was so much more that I was missing out on, but because of the
Yeah.
religion that I was connected to or trying to release, there was almost like a blockage there. So I kind of revived it the last 2 months and I was like, here we are. I feel it. I understand it now. And we're going to attach it to this. And this is what we're doing. So I'm here
Oh
now
my gosh.
working with the eldest daughters. Yep.
Like, this is, I think, the first time I'm going to say, like, me and Nishani have, like, taken a pause to kind of digest because, yeah, every word that you just said, I think it
Yeah.
resonated with both of us
Mm.
to every possible. I think I have goosebumps right now. Because
Yeah.
I felt everything. Because, yeah, why do you think we are here? Why do you think the trauma that we went through for a reason? There is a reason why I'm here today. If you asked me a few years back, there was no plan of
Hmm.
me being on this side of the world, and suddenly I found myself on this side of the world. I found people who understood somehow what was going on inside my mind. I didn't have to be sorry for who I am, and it comes at a particular stage, I'm going to say, to a lot of people. And on the other side, so I was in Dubai and I was in India, and nobody would understand me quite a bit. Like, I moved here, and somehow with Nishani, this thing exploded for me. Like, I am in front of people like you and all other the individuals who understand when, like, things like this come up for you. There is like this community that somehow I have figured out. So thank you so much for somehow making me feel more seen, I'm going to say. I think
Mm.
that's something even like I'm going to say for Nishani as well. Like, I was looking at her as well when you're saying, I'm like, yes, I know this. I know where it is coming from. I know why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. Yeah, like, that's my takeaway from your last thing.
Yeah.
And for you to point something 5 years ago when you had
Yeah.
not even narrowed down, like, you were like still exploring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
the subtle messages that you get, and
Yeah.
you act upon it.
Before we get back to our conversation, here's a little local love that I want to share with our community. Today's episode is brewed with heart by Integrity Coffee, where they offer fresh roast, real flavor, and Michigan made goodness in every cup. Grab your bag at integritycoffee22.com and use our special code HONEST20 for 20% off. And I think, something, because when I first met or saw you, Nilzara, you were mostly, that's why I was really curious to get into the eldest daughters of
Yeah.
addict fathers, because when I first was introduced to Nilzara, I was learning more about the religious deconstruction, because that's what you were mostly talking about, right? And I
Hmm.
see that it's almost like as you are venturing in your own journey and you are doing your own
Yeah.
work and your healing work, right? I've just gotten to witness that. So for you to have kind of tapped into this is my niche now, it's like seeing the evolution of you because you are doing the work, right? Because it does
Yes.
take a lot, right?
Yeah.
And what you're describing, just like what Gigi was saying, it takes, it's a special kind of human to go through the certain life experiences that we have been through. And it's almost like our soul knew that we were capable of going through it, even though in our human bodies we're probably like, why me? Like, I've definitely had
What the
moments where I'm
hell?
like, why couldn't I just get the life that the other person that I'm staring at, who
What?
seems so like
For sure.
sheltered and like they haven't seen they haven't seen the betrayal and the pain that I witnessed in my life at an early age, So I think there are times when I've battled with my own source of like, why? Now, right, from what you were sharing, that's what I was reflecting on. Now I look back and I'm like, oh, and I talk about this in mental health a lot, where the way that I phrase it, I'm like, it's like a light switch. If you're stuck in trauma loops, the light switch is constantly on. So you're just reacting to the trauma and you're reacting to the emotional trigger. And so that skill that you developed is mixed in this muddy water, right?
Yes.
And that's why
Hmm.
the Great logo is the lotus, because from that muddy water comes this beautiful flower that blossoms and outshines everything, right? And that's the
Hmm.
journey that you're describing, but you couldn't have
Yes.
the flower couldn't blossom if there
Yeah.
wasn't that condition. The condition created this environment where it could blossom into what it is. And not everybody is able to separate the trauma from their own skill. So I have seen that. I have seen people just kind of spiral in their own trauma loops, and then their entire life is consumed by that, right? And then they're
Yes.
the victims of their lives. And then we also experience people who they decide, I'm like, listen, at some point, you get to turn the switch off if you want to, right? Like,
Mhm.
because I, as an eldest daughter, sometimes I'm like, maybe I don't need to be carrying the weight of every single person on this planet. And I can just
Yeah.
turn it down for a second, go take a nap, and then see how I feel. And if I want to pick it back up again, I can just turn it back on if I want to, but it is now an active choice that I'm aware
Yes.
of, right? Rather than, so I think that's also something that you are helping other eldest daughters discover within themselves, because there is some talent, there is some skill tapped within all of us in all of these
Oh, yeah.
experiences,
Yeah.
right? And all you got to do is just kind of pull out the weeds to be like, now let's observe this for what it is, and how can you use this to benefit you, to fulfill your life in the way that you needed to. So it's really incredible,
Yes.
even watching you journey through
Yeah.
that, because
Thank
you're right.
you.
I'm glad you brought up the Catholic deconstruction, because that there's a lot of programming it sounded like you had to work through, and you had to move
100%, yes.
through. Yeah. Uh, so in that, I'm really curious, because it sounds like, speaking in tongues is something that I had heard before. I just didn't know it was the
Mhm.
same thing as light language, or it's like parallel to that, which I think people who
Mhm.
say speaking in tongues, they like kind of see that as like a different thing. I've actually heard
Yes.
people change it up, especially religious, Catholic, Christian, especially Catholic, because Catholic individuals they're not believers of this. They do not believe that belongs in the church, that you can speak like that and speak in tongues. So I I'm really curious, right? Because it's almost like you had been exposed to light language in a church, but in a Christian church, right? And then you were
Mhm.
deconstructing that, but you maintained that light language, and even evolved it. It's like it's almost like it's
Yeah.
evolved to a new level, but
Mhm.
you had to go through discovering and unlearning and like deprogramming and all that. So I'm really curious about that journey as well, and what that meant for you.
Yeah, so I've been married a couple of times, and my big pivot point, 'cause I've been married 3 times. So my big pivot point was after my second marriage.
Hmm.
The I was the common denominator and all the craziness. They were both,
Hmm.
Christian marriages. We waited to have sex till we were married. Like I did everything by the book. We were both in leadership in church, all the things, right? And
Okay.
I was very devout in the church. And people are like, "Oh, well, you didn't love God enough, or you didn't." I was like, "What the?" I was like, I did all the things because I've always felt connected to source. And I
Yeah.
always did things because I felt that it was the right thing to do, right? So I was in the crisis pregnancy centers, I was teaching, I was in the leadership of the church, in the communities. I mean, I
Mm.
was involved. I wasn't just like, sometimes I go to church. I was like there all the time, doing all the things all the time, and
Wow.
fasting and reading the Bible, listening. And so I was pretty devout there for a really long time, but I
Mm.
notice that here I am, I'm doing all the right things by the
Mm.
book. I have a relationship with God. I'm doing these things, and I'm still getting into these abusive relationships because they were both very abusive, my first 2 marriages. And
Okay.
I'm like, I can't go through this. I can't go
Mm.
through this again. So I reconnected with my 3rd husband because we were makeout partners back in the day. You know, he was in the military, and Top Gun, the movie Top Gun, it's
Yeah.
actually recorded in a really small town called Fallon, Nevada, and that's the
Okay.
base that I lived in that town. And
Okay.
so there's a ton of training. There's a ton of training, but it's a small town. Like you have 6 stoplights all on one street. It's tiny, and so our highlight was when we would get military guys. We were like, "Woo!" Like,
Oh.
"Nice." So this random hot guy threw a football at me in Walmart, and I'm like, "What a loser. Who does that?" And then I saw him and I was like,
Okay.
"Hi." Hello. So we ended up going to their hotel room and we made out, and he was great. He never tried to, do anything. We just partied and had a good time. But it was around 9/11, and so we lost contact after,
Mm,
he went overseas and stuff like that. But so we rekindled. We rekindled and we've been married. It'll be 8 years this year. We have a son together and stuff
yeah.
like that. But
Oh,
anyways, so that was way sidetracked. And I'm not sure where I was going with all of that. So help me remember, friends. Okay, so rewind. So I left my second husband, and I found out that I was the common denominator in all of the craze. So I reconnected with my current husband, and I moved out of
yeah.
the small town. I went to Virginia, and he created a space for me that I was allowed to decompress and just relieve
Mm,
everything. So I was kind of having a hard time with Christianity anyways. And
sure.
here, not here, but in Virginia, when I was with him, he's so great and just kind of was like, do what you got to do, So I got into
Mm,
therapy and I got my certification in life coaching and all this stuff. And I was just coming to a place where Christianity was not resonating with me anymore. So I,
mm-hmm.
however, felt deeply connected, like Source was calling me. God was like, hey, we need to be doing this. And I'm like, excuse you, but I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I don't know what you want from me. I know you're real, but I don't know what that means for me. And I need you to strip the crap. I need you to strip the crap. I need to see you in your entirety. And I need you to bring somebody to me to help me on this
Mm,
journey. And so after that, I was trying to connect with communities, like Christian communities, and they just wouldn't have me. I don't know if I was weird or just the energy was off or whatever. But then somebody reached out to me. Her name was Jagdeep to be on her podcast, and she was
okay.
amazing. It was like, do you know who Joyce Meyer is? Joyce,
Sounds familiar.
she's an older Christian lady, and she was like one
Yes.
of the trailblazers to be at the forefront and to like hold her own sermons and stuff like that. So I
Yes.
remember Jagdeep messaged me and she's like, oh, I just pulled some tarot cards for myself. And I just listened to Joyce Meyer and the message today was so great. And I was like mind blown because the thought of somebody listening to Joyce Meyer, who is a strong Christian woman employing tarot cards for herself, I was like, what is this witchery that's happening right now? What do you mean you did that? I was like almost mortified. I was like, oh my gosh. So
Ah.
it just kind of evolved from there. Like she was so great. And in that time frame, she was kind of exposing me to speakers and all this other stuff. And that is where I learned that light language and speaking in tongues were kind of the same in that time frame of deconstructing and
Mm,
trying to figure things out.
mm,
Remember having that conversation with God and being like, what do I do with this? I feel you calling
yeah.
me to use my light language and in the or my tongues. And the thing was is that it was changing. The dialect was
Mm,
changing. And I was like, this is weird. This is different. So
mm.
I knew
Oh,
something was going on. I wasn't sure what that looked like or what that meant. But then I attended something online and I saw this woman. She was talking about how her son had passed and she went into light language. And that's where I was like, oh my gosh, it's the same thing. Like I knew instantly at that moment that that's what I was looking
wow.
for. And that's when I dived deep in and did all the research and glossolalia and ecstatic speech and the studies.
Wow.
There's studies out there that show that this is a real thing. So for those of you haters that are like, this is not real, you're just making it up, and we were really not. And there's a part of our brain that's lit up when we're doing this, and it's not the same as linguistics. So we're not. It's
Wow.
not. So um
Mm,
yeah,
wow.
it's been powerful. So since then, m- I'm open and it is constantly evolving. The movement, everything like that has changed for me.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, your story of kind of
Yeah.
like being the devout religious person and then realizing that that wasn't that it kind of it sounded like it failed you, like everybody in that system just kind of didn't they couldn't support what was happening and how you were evolving, and this is why to me it sounded like you were getting too big for the room, you know what I mean? You just had to
Yeah.
leave the room. And so you answered the call. It sounded like your husband right now was like also that pathway out. Like he also provided that
Yes.
container and made that space, right? And Gigi and I have talked about that in our podcast where like it makes such a big difference when
Yes.
especially an eldest daughter finds a significant other that can create a safe container. It may not need to be on everything, you know, because
Right.
maybe they're not the best at creating containers for every aspect of your life, but just creating that safety for you to venture into this, because look at what's happened now. Like look at how you've evolved now. It's
Yeah.
incredible. and
Thank
and
you.
Gigi
Mhm.
was right. Like you came up with Mind, Heart, and Cookies 5 years ago, right? Like it's almost like the download was there. Like your path, your higher self was already like, this is where we're headed, but you have no idea where we're going yet. So I'm
Yes,
gonna give
I
it
had
to
no
you
idea.
in little bits and pieces, little nuggets here and there, and see how you piece it all together, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I
there's
coined
so
like,
many
I went
things.
through the trademark. I went through everything, and I also trademarked your cookie is precious too, because I knew, like, I wasn't 110% sure, but I knew it was something. So and that's a big process. Trademarking anything is a big process. So here
Yeah.
I am
Uh-huh.
5 years later finally piecing that together. But yeah, I'm grateful I did it.
Yeah. No, like there are things that happen to in your life, and you somehow just say that it's it's a coincidence, or like people like to brush it under the rug. But sometimes, if you think back and dial it back and think about it, you have known about certain things. It comes to you in a particular way, and you're just like, now I know why I was doing a certain kind of thing. Now I know why I was pulling away from XYZ, or why was
Mhm.
I drawn to a particular thing. But in that minute, to convince your mind is the most difficult part, right? Like, you know that this is
Mhm.
the path you're supposed to take, but it's a
Mhm.
almost like a least traveled path. There are paths that everybody has tried, tested, and it has worked for people.
Mhm.
But somehow, knowing all of us, we three are in this room right now, and we have established the fact that we have always chosen the path that is least traveled.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
again, like finding a smaller ways between our path also are going to be least traveled paths. How would you like? What would be that one thing that helped you break like that thought of like it's fine, I'm okay on my path, versus I don't have to follow the entire herd mentality, right? Like there is a choice that you get at one particular point, and you have to make it. Like,
Mhm.
what goes on in your mind at that particular moment? Because I think that's the most pivotal moment.
I feel like that was a really big moment for me. I feel like there was a lot of micro moments like that where it's
Mm.
like I got to a place where my mental health was really rough. So
Mm.
even in the deconstructing, and even though my husband created a safe space for me, we also have, and I don't want to get into this part a lot, but just to put into preference, I have a stepdaughter who has very heavy mental health issues with a
Mhm.
TBI as well. So
Mhm.
that was morphine, like, she my people pleaser was on high, and it was revved up all the time with her, and
Mm.
so the mental health portion of me, I had to start making some hard decisions because I felt like I was mentally declining. Like,
Mm.
I felt like I was losing myself at in a different capacity than I did in, my last marriage or in the religion. I had to start making these decisions, and at that point, I felt like I had to make the decision to release things that did not allow me to
Mm.
prioritize myself. And that meant religion, that meant my
Mhm.
culture, that meant my family, that meant like so many things that I was so attached to that I
Yeah.
had to like leave that. It just comes to that, like, do you want to continue the life that you're living? And do you
Mm.
want, your body to decline and the anxiety to be so much, so crazy that it consumes you? Or are you
Yeah.
willing to put in the energy for yourself that you've put in for other people your whole fucking life? Like, it just
Yeah.
came to that point where I didn't want to live in such pain anymore on
Mhm.
all levels that I was willing to give up stuff. I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and I said, I would rather go to hell
Mm,
than to be in a religion that does not allow me to listen to my heart.
mm,
Period.
period.
Like, I can't anymore. I
Yeah.
can't, sacrifice myself in the name of Christ anymore. Like, I just can't do it. And
Yeah.
so
Wow.
that I, I came to that place and I felt like it was multiple times. I'm Hispanic and I was told that I was acting really white once I started healing, and I had to kind of cut that cord and be like, okay,
Oh,
then let me be white, not that I think I am, but if
yeah.
that's what you're going to portray and that's what you think is happening here, instead of, oh, Nilzara is choosing healthiness, if you
Mm,
want to connect that to being a certain color, then fine, but we're not going
yeah.
to connect anymore. So I
Yeah.
had to cut cords with that. I had to cut cords with family members. I had to just
Wow.
kind of release all of these things that I felt identified who I was, and then restructured what that looked like for me. So
Oof.
it's a
Yeah.
lot.
I mean, yeah, what's really sticking out from Gigi's question to how you described everything that you have kind of persevered through is that what I'm really getting is when you enter this crossroad, sometimes you're entering it because everything that you currently are holding on to is draining your soul.
Ye-
Like literally draining
Yes,
your soul in
everything.
some degree, right? Or your physical body is experiencing. I've worked with a lot of women who have physiological symptoms, health issues, autoimmune conditions, allergies to everything on the planet they're allergic to somehow. And I'm like, your physical body can no longer exist in the reality that you keep holding on to because you're thinking you're safe here, right? You
Yeah,
think this is where you need to be. And it is like what you're describing, Nilzara, is incredibly painful losses. You have to let go of so many people that you thought were your safe zones, right? Like your belief
yes,
systems, the family members. So but then it's I hope that our listeners are hearing this and realizing like, okay, on the other side of all of that pain is
Yeah.
serenity, this peace, this evolution, this ability for you to expand beyond what you thought was ever possible because you were contained by belief systems or people and an
yes.
environment that just wanted you to be small, and
Yeah.
I do think that some people stay there. I think I've met people who stay there and they're
Mm-hmm.
miserable later in life, right? You were talking about family and they have a hard time receiving the changes. Nilzara and I bonded over how much, because I had not seen the cartoon Moana, and Nilzara has admitted that it's one of her favorite cartoons
Yeah.
and animations. And when I watched it because of Nilzara was like, "You have to watch it, Dashani." And so I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna watch it." And my partner comes upstairs this was like months ago now. Comes upstairs and I'm watching Moana and I'm like in tears. I'm like, "Oh my god, why did it take me so long to watch this?" And he's like, "I'm gonna come back." And he just like walks away. He's like, "I'm gonna leave you to that, whatever that is." But it spoke to my soul. And when you were talking about all of this, Nilzara,
Yeah.
because I know you connect with water and like Moana's journey, like how she ventures into the unknown, like you're all alone, right? You are
Mm-hmm.
basically all alone doing something that nobody agrees with. And
Hmm.
somehow when she was done and she introduced everybody to like the new and the things that brought abundance to the community, like all of a sudden everybody's clapping and they're like
Yeah.
celebrating like, "Oh my god, yeah, we knew it." but like but obviously that's not how it looked. So I think I love that I have gotten to witness you as a new friend experience this niche now, and that you're really tapping into a world where I do believe eldest daughters needs more eldest daughters to show
Yep.
that, hey, if I walked this path and I didn't die, I promise you, you can do this because you actually have more power than you realize.
A
And
hundred
whatever,
percent.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever your circumstances might have been, those were just building up some skill, developing these skills that you probably can't compare with anybody else. Because I have met some really powerful eldest siblings and daughters, sons, eldest siblings that have tapped into levels that I was like, whoa, like even your story, like I think I'm really glad that you felt safe enough to share it with us, because you shared so much, and I'm noticing it's already an hour, and I was like, oh, we'll start wrapping up in
Yeah.
50 minutes. And I just looked at the time. I'm like, wait a second, crap. I wanted to get into like the cookies, like, like that's like a taboo topic. Like Gigi and I come from a
Oh,
culture,
yeah.
and we're exactly, and I knew it's not, we don't honor that. We don't honor that sacred space, even though we know it's sacred. It's where life comes from, but we don't talk about that, right? We're just supposed
Mhm, mhm.
to perform. You said it so well. You were like, I could put on a circus show in the bedroom. Like, oh my God, I thought I was not going to stop laughing, and also like slightly crying when you said that, because I'm like, oh my God, you're describing me from a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yes.
this is how we were programmed,
Yeah.
right? So
100, yes, yes.
I,
Yeah,
I'm, no, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, I had the religious end of it, but again, like in the Hispanic world, we're Puerto Rican, and it's very much like, you save yourself. You're more valuable if you save yourself.
Mm,
And your number one thing is to like your value is in finding a husband and having kids. And
right.
and that's what you do. And so carrying that, set like in the Christian world, my body's not mine. I save it and then I give it away to somebody. I keep it and
Uh-huh.
then I give it away to somebody.
Yep.
And, I cause temptation with this body. Oh my goodness. There's just so much to it that
Mm,
it's like not even ours to begin with. And the
yeah.
reality of it
Mm-hmm.
is it's
Mm,
ours. We are the creators and
mm-hmm.
there's so
Mm-hmm.
much power in that. And we are the only things on this whole world that have something that's only meant for pleasure.
Mm,
Period. And the thought that that is taken advantage of, or in some cultures that that's like totally cut off and,
mm,
is just wild to me. And so,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
mind, heart, and the cookie, that is something that we sacrifice our mind. The ego gets loud and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Our heart, I help women reclaim that because our perception of love is off. It's outside of us. It's in
Yes.
transaction, right?
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
that's where intuition is too. It's in our body, but when we are not in our body, then we're
Mm,
kind of fucked. And
yeah.
then our womb, some women are like, well, I wasn't really promiscuous. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that on an energetic level, that part of you was never developed. It was never developed to
Mm,
be in your feminine. Especially I deal with the addict fathers or fathers who were absent or fathers who were assholes and where we had to take
yeah.
that spot. We had to step into our masculine to be the masculine
Exactly.
in our household. So we have
That's
to
right.
reclaim that part of us, that creation part of us to be
Mm,
able to create the life that we desire. And then some of us,
Yes.
unfortunately the dads did things. And then some of us, the only form of intimacy that we learned was through,
mm,
you know, letting, doing all the
yeah.
wild things, letting the guys lay the pipe and do, the circus act in the bedroom and all of that stuff. And we felt
Yeah.
that was a means of connection, but
Mm-hmm.
there's
That's right.
so much more to it than that.
Oh,
And I know for me being in abusive relationships,
hmm.
there was times where it's like, I'm either dropping it like it's hot, or I might die tonight. And so this is,
Wow.
I would rather sacrifice this side of me to make sure I wake up in the morning so I could go to work. So there's so many,
Yeah.
the cookie is very important. And that's why I emphasize that as well. I help women reclaim these three parts as a whole
Yeah.
because those are the things that we tend to sacrifice to create a false sense of love, safety, and belonging for ourselves.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Wow.
So, yeah,
I
I'm taking a long pause to breathe in all of the information. And I'm
hmm.
going to say every word has somehow resonated. And again, I know why we were meant to have this conversation, because you've validated a lot of things that, like, even I've been through. Like, it just, the stories are a little bit different, but the feelings were very
Yeah.
same. yes, I was in my masculine for really long. And then everybody would kind of be like, oh, but you don't need a man because you can always. I'm like, no. And little when I met my husband, he's just like, now, are you a passenger princess forever? I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't mind being that. But up until I met him, I couldn't drop that part of me. Like couldn't step into my feminine energies a lot. And I have seen my body go through that change. And I'm like, I don't know how that came up to. Like, it was not like, oh, I had this thing and we spoke about nothing. It's just my body's like, okay, this person is here and you can step into your feminine energy now. And like, you were also saying all of these things. Like, it's like a lot of things that happen to you. And when the right people kind of walk in and like, when things come in front of you, you just start adapting to the newer change and you're like, oh, this is where, like, you start breaking your old patterns and stepping into who you want to be.
Oh
Mhm,
my
Yeah,
God.
mhm,
that's a little
mhm.
takeaway for myself personally. I'm gonna say, and thank you so much for
Yeah.
like giving me like a board to like be like, oh yes, like this is a
You're
path to growth, and it's not like as if somebody's trying to stop my journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, rediscovering the power of the cookie, I think, is
Yeah,
probably one of the most liberating experiences a woman can ever allow themselves to experience if they're brave enough to just let themselves go through it, because the moment you start reprogramming and unlearning all of these belief systems associated with how a woman should be and what it means to be a woman, it you become untouchable. Like, society literally cannot touch a woman who has
yes.
discovered her full
yeah,
power. Like, and it makes society extremely upset to witness women that way. But I think
Oh, yeah.
more women like, like you, Nilzara, like speaking up and educating and providing
yeah,
testimony for your own path, I think is so important. And it's almost like light language kind of perfectly wraps all of this perfectly to allow you to express yourself, right? Because a very big takeaway that I took from this that I don't think I even understood until today was light language is for me. It's for me and
Yes.
for me and this body and this energetic space that I hold. So that if I set the intention, it's not that I'm doing this for anybody else. It's literally just for me. So if I wanted to unlearn something with my cookie and I wanted to establish a relationship, because I do believe
Yes.
the womb has its own intelligence, just like the brain and the gut, and it does have its
Mhm.
own feelings and it
yeah,
responds to things, right? So I do think, like, and linguistics, as you said, which I'm glad that you verified, that there's research that this is
yeah,
acknowledged in the world, in the masses, that there is acknowledgement about this being more effective as a way of bypassing, because logic can get in the way, ego gets in the way.
Yes.
So if anything, light language bypasses those barriers and allows for the brain and body connection to be even stronger with that spirituality piece, right? So,
Mhm.
and yeah, so those were some of my biggest, like, yeah, your testimony is incredible. Like, thank you so much for
yeah,
sharing
Thank
that with
you.
us,
You guys are so awesome.
for being so open. I cannot believe it's over an hour already. I kind of feel like we could keep talking about this because
yeah,
the
For
cookie
sure.
alone was like, crap, we could have gotten to that earlier, but we were so caught up in the light language.
yes,
But, it sounds like as you are doing the work, and as you evolve, perhaps maybe there might be other ventures and other doorways, other pathways that you will open up for your community and for the world. And when you
mhm,
do, I will be cheering you on the sidelines for absolute damn sure. So when I see that
You're
happen,
so
I'm gonna reach
awesome.
back
Thank you.
out to you and be like, "Yo, Nilzara, we need to have you for take two and talk about how this has evolved." Because when I met you, it was really just deconstruction, and now you're identified a population uh, that's very specific, very niche. And I think it's incredible because there is a huge population that it may feel like it's a very small world, but there's a lot of
mhm,
eldest daughters with not just addict fathers, but like you said, like absentee fathers or like kind of shitty fathers who are like not there, not
100%. Yeah.
serving their role. Right. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
this has been incredible. I was curious
yeah.
how you felt, how are you feeling about this episode, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought I loved the conversation we had with the light language. I loved the conversation that we had just in, I don't know, I don't really have like a favorite part. I think it flowed beautifully. And if I can say anything in regards to the light language, like give yourself
Mhm.
permission to experience this because this is life changing. And it is, like you said, it is for you first and foremost. Can we use it? Like I use it with my healings all the times. I use water, I use light
Mm,
language, and I use the moon and the sun, and I like, put it all
mhm,
together like a potion and like use it. But your light language is for you first and foremost and your own edification. It is
mm,
direct communication and frequency with source, and you absolutely deserve to be using it in this lifetime. So I'm glad we
mm.
talked about it in lengths, and I hope that people have a deeper understanding of it and knowing and not so like that's weird or like that's cool, but it's not for me. No,
Mhm,
no, it is for you. It is for if you have a
mhm.
soul, you have light language, and that's just the truth of it. So
Yeah,
being able to have that connection with yourself is very powerful and it should not be something that is overlooked.
mhm, mhm.
Yup.
Yeah. Gigi, what about you? What thoughts?
I think I said what I had to at the 10-minute mark because that's how I still feel. It's like my cup is overflowing at this point, and like sometimes you get the front row seat to like something that is unfolding in your life as well, but sometimes you want to take the back row seat. Like sometimes I
Mhm,
feel like with all of the conversations that I'm having, I feel like I'm claiming a lot of my life as well, right? Like this conversation has
mm,
opened up some parts of me which I was refusing to accept as well.
mm,
It's about like people pleasing. It's about like even why I was feeling it's okay. And you used one word which really stuck to me: when people call you weird. And I
mm,
always that I'm like, I was the weird one, I was the weird one, and now I started saying was, and before I used to always say is. I know I'm
mm.
the weird one, but
Yeah,
like
I
that
like being
resonated
weird.
so much. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Like there's so many things, like even your pattern breaking. Like,
Yeah.
I attracted a lot of people that were never right for me. But when I had to let go of that, like suddenly like things unfolded and it was right there for me. It's just, how would you change and look at the same thing that happened, same story, but a different perspective, like you cannot always be victim blaming. Like you just have to change and be like, oh, I learned this out of it.
Mm.
And that's going to be a lot of my takeaway from this episode. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank
No.
you.
I
I
love
think
that.
I've never seen Gigi that like dumbfounded. Like she's been speechless on so many occasions. And I was like, I am so secretly excited that she's been feeling like that because I knew you were gonna blow both of our minds. I genuinely
Yeah.
knew that. But like the extent of your story and you sharing more of your personal journey and how you're phrasing it, how you're sharing it, and what you've done with it now, I think is incredibly powerful. Nilzara, I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that you've been a part of this
Thank
podcast.
you.
And like, I swear, I'm pretty sure we will have to have you back at some
Yeah.
point, but I'm just curious how you evolve, how this new journey, this new venture, right? Like it's almost like you're in
Yeah.
a whole new world, but really a world that you're very familiar with. So I think you're actually going to feel a lot stronger in this
Uh-huh.
new in this new venture. But anyways, we will definitely keep in touch. And if anybody's wondering, we're going to add Nilzara's social handles on our show notes so that
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to, and I definitely recommend everybody go to her TikTok. I'm pretty sure it's probably in her every bio on every social, but she has a downloadable guide so that
Mm-hmm.
you can
Yes.
get started with your oat light language journey, whatever that looks like. So you don't have to tell us about it. Nobody needs to know. It could just be your little secret. We'll
Yeah.
definitely keep it a secret if you ever let us know, but it can be your secret where you download her guide and you tap into what it's like for you to connect with your soul and your creator, whatever that means to you. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, thank you so much, Nilzara. If you've made
Yeah,
it
thank
this
you.
far, yeah. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We hope it made you feel a little bit more seen. This is If I'm Being Honest. We're not promising perfection, but we're showing up as we are.
Until next time, stay real, stay honest.